Jordan Walker stepped quietly through the front door of his sprawling Los Angeles estate. The marble floors echoed softly beneath his polished loafers as he moved inside unannounced, exactly as he wanted. The scent of lemon polish lingered in the air, mingling with the faintest hint of baby powder. He was home 2 days earlier than expected, a rare and spontaneous decision after cutting short an investment conference in Dubai. Business could wait. He needed something real, something grounding. Dressed in a crisp white suit with a sky blue tie loosened around his collar, Jordan looked every bit the billionaire entrepreneur. But beneath the sharp exterior was a man who hadn't seen his infant son in nearly 2 weeks. Today was supposed to be a surprise. He didn't want the staff to prepare anything. He wanted to walk into the rhythm of the house as it truly was, the way it breathed when he wasn't looming over it. But what he found stopped him cold. From the hallway, a soft humming floated toward him. He followed the sound, turning the corner into the kitchen, expecting maybe one of the chefs tidying up. Instead, he froze. There, bathed in golden morning light streaming through the window, was Emma, the new live-in housekeeper. A woman in her late 20s, white with her sandy hair pinned up in a messy, efficient bun. She wore lavender uniform sleeves rolled past her elbows. Her hands were submerged in a baby tub balanced carefully in the kitchen sink. Inside that tub, cushioned in a soft towel, was Zion, his son, barely 8 months old, giggling as warm water dripped across his little belly. Emma carefully supported his head with one hand while gently rinsing him with the other. Her movements were slow, precise. She didn't see Jordan. She was focused entirely on the baby. Jordan's breath caught. No one was supposed to touch Zion without the nanny, Marcia. That had always been the rule. Even he followed it. Where was she? Wasn't she off for just 1 day? Why would Emma take it upon herself to bathe his son? He felt his chest tighten, his fists clenched by instinct. This was his child. A housekeeper had no business doing this. And yet, Zion was calm, happy even. He squealed when Emma touched his nose with the washcloth splashing with his feet. She smiled gently and continued humming a quiet lullaby, one that Jordan hadn't heard in years, one that brought an ache to his throat. It was the same song his late wife used to sing to Zion before she passed. He remained still, watching, listening, struggling. It wasn't just that Emma was bathing his son. It was how she was doing it. She moved with a kind of tender certainty that didn't come from obligation. She wasn't just completing a task. She was caring, truly caring. And somehow the melody, the sunlight, and Zion's laughter all collided into something so painfully familiar, it made his stomach knot. Emma lifted Zion from the water, careful and fluid in motion. She wrapped him in a fluffy towel, whispered something Jordan couldn't hear, and kissed his damp forehead. Zion relaxed against her shoulder eyes, blinking slowly. That was enough. Jordan stepped forward, his voice tight. "What are you doing?" Emma jolted her back, straightening as she spun toward him, her face drained of color. "Mr. Walker, I didn't hear you come in." "Clearly. Where's Marcia?" "She's still on leave. She was scheduled off through Friday." Emma's voice trembled. "I thought you were still overseas." "I was. Changed plans. And yet here I am, watching my housekeeper bathe my son like you're his mother." Emma tightened her hold on Zion instinctively. He had a fever last night. Not high, but enough that he couldn't sleep. He was crying for hours. The thermometer was missing. I tried everything. I remembered you said warm water helped before. So I did that. I was going to tell you. Jordan stared at her silent, his mind racing. Zion looked fine now, comfortable, at peace. But the idea that he hadn't been informed cut deep. He should have known. He should have been there. "You work for me," he said finally. "You clean, you organize, you don't handle my son." Emma's eyes glistened. "I didn't mean to overstep. He needed someone, and no one else was here. Put him in his crib, then pack your things." Her lips parted. "You're firing me." "You heard me." The silence between them stretched. Emma nodded slowly, turned and walked toward the nursery, holding Zion close. Jordan watched her go, his heart hammering his mind loud with doubt. Something about the way she held Zion the lullaby, she hummed the fear in her voice. It didn't sit right. Not wrong, just heavy. He moved into his study, fingers drumming the desk, thoughts spiraling. He opened the baby monitor app on his phone. Zion was asleep, calm, safe. And yet Jordan couldn't shake it. Back upstairs, Emma stood in the guest room. Her suitcase half filled her eyes, rimmed with red. She folded her uniform with shaking hands, placing a worn photograph on top. A boy in a wheelchair smiling. Her brother, Elijah. Gone now, 3 years past. He had epilepsy. She dropped out of nursing school to care for him full time. No one at this house knew that. Why would they? She sang him that lullaby every night, long before she ever met Zion. It was hers before it belonged to anyone else. A soft knock broke her thoughts. It was Mr. Henry, the butler. "Mr. Walker said your final check and references will be ready by this evening. He's asked that you be gone before sunset." Emma nodded, holding back tears. Understood. But as she turned to zip the case, a small sound stopped her cold. A whimper. Zion. Not his hungry cry, not his tired one either. This was different, urgent, weak, just like the one from last night. Emma hesitated only a second. And then she was moving faster than thought back into the nursery. Zion was squirming in his crib, beads of sweat forming at his temple, his breathing shallow. Her instincts surged. She rushed to him, placing a cool hand on his head. No, baby. Not again." Behind her, a sharp voice cut the moment. "Step away from him." Jordan stood at the doorway, arms crossed, unreadable. Emma didn't turn. "He's not okay. His fever's higher, his breathing's changed. I called a doctor." "There's no time, Jordan." He blinked at the sound of his name on her lips. She continued urgently. "He's dehydrated. His breathing's labored. This could be an infection. If we wait, he might seize." Jordan stepped forward, anxiety finally surfacing. "How do you know?" Emma turned to face him, voice low. "Because I've seen it before. With my brother." The room fell silent, except for Zion's faint cry. "I was studying pediatric nursing before I became his full-time caregiver. I know what I'm seeing." Jordan stared at her, then at his son. For a moment, pride and fear warred inside him. Then he stepped forward and handed Zion back to her. "Do what you have to do." Emma didn't waste a second. Her movements were smooth and focused. She placed a cool cloth beneath Zion's arms, adjusted his position to ease breathing, administered small sips of an electrolyte solution from the kitchen. Zion slowly calmed. By the time the doctor arrived, his temperature had dipped, his vitals stabilized. The doctor confirmed what Emma had said a few more minutes, and things might have turned dangerous. Jordan said nothing as the doctor left. He stood in the nursery doorway, watching Emma sitting beside Zion's crib, brushing his curls back with care. She stood when she saw him, assuming it was time to go. But he stopped her with a single quiet sentence. "Don't go." Her eyes met his full of disbelief. He stepped inside the room. I judged you without knowing you. I was scared. But you saved my son. Emma said nothing. He took a breath. Marcia is retiring. I need someone I can trust. Someone who doesn't just show up, but who cares. She hesitated. Not as a housekeeper, he added. I want you as Zion's full-time caregiver. And if you want it, I'll sponsor you to finish your degree. Emma's lips parted, but no words came. I've seen how he looks at you. You're already family to him. Tears welled again. Just say you'll stay. And she nodded, her hands trembling, as she reached for Zion's crib once more. The house had fallen into a stillness that didn't feel peaceful. Jordan walked through the halls in slow, measured steps, the weight of what had just happened pressing into his chest. Zion was resting again, his tiny breath soft and steady. Emma had left his side only after making sure he was completely calm. She sat quietly now in the den, hands folded in her lap, her suitcase untouched at her feet. Jordan stood in the doorway watching her. She looked smaller now, less like the steady woman who had taken charge when no one else did. She wasn't the maid anymore. She wasn't anything he could define with a simple title. He stepped inside. I meant what I said. I want you to stay. Emma looked up, her eyes tired. You don't have to offer me anything. I understand why you were upset. Jordan shook his head. That doesn't excuse how I treated you. She hesitated. I didn't do it to prove anything. I couldn't ignore him. I know. Silence settled between them again. Jordan walked to the window, looking out over the garden, but seeing none of it. My wife used to sing him that lullaby, he said after a moment. Emma looked down. I didn't know. I used to sing it to my brother. He passed 3 years ago. Jordan turned. Epilepsy. She nodded. He had severe seizures. I dropped out of nursing school to take care of him full-time after our parents passed. We didn't have anyone else? His voice softened. I'm sorry. I never planned on staying in this kind of work. But nursing school costs money, and I needed something steady. She paused. It was supposed to be temporary. Jordan leaned against the back of the armchair. You're not just steady, Emma. You acted with more care and instinct than most people I've hired with degrees. She gave a small, uncertain smile. I didn't expect any of this. Neither did I. He looked toward the hallway, toward where Zion slept. You saved him today. Emma shook her head gently. I was just doing what anyone would do. No, Jordan said. You did more than that. A long breath passed between them. He moved toward the kitchen, signaling her to follow. As they walked, the house began to feel less like a structure filled with silence, and more like a place where something had just begun. I want to make this official, Jordan said, opening the fridge and pulling out 2 bottles of water. You'll be Zion's full-time caregiver. I'll handle your tuition. Go back to school, finish what you started. I'll make sure your schedule fits what's best for both of you. Emma took the bottle he offered. Her hand brushed his briefly. Are you sure? I've never been more certain of anything. Her voice wavered. This changes everything. It should. They sat in the breakfast nook, the same place where just hours ago she had been bathing Zion in the sink. The memory still lingered between them, but now it carried less weight and more meaning. Marcia will be retiring next month, Jordan said. She's been with the family since before Zion was born. Finding someone to replace her, I wasn't sure it was even possible, until now. Emma's eyes shimmered. She seems kind. She is, and she'll help you transition into the role. What about the rest of the staff? They answer to me. They'll follow my lead. Emma hesitated. It's not just the title or the job. It's this house. It's your life. It's very different from mine. Jordan nodded. And yet, here you are, already part of it. Her smile came slowly, unsure, but warm. Over the next few days, the rhythm of the house shifted. Emma moved into a new room, closer to Zion's nursery. Marcia returned to help ease the change, greeting Emma with a knowing kindness that spoke volumes. There was no resentment in her eyes, only relief. Zion grew stronger, his fever fading fully. Emma monitored his health carefully, jotting notes and checking symptoms with clinical precision. Jordan noticed the way she moved, now confident, but not overstepping. He watched her from a distance, sometimes closer, always learning something new. How she read Zion's cues before he cried. How she kept lullabies low but consistent. How she kept a journal by her bedside, recording everything. One evening, he caught her in the study poring over an anatomy textbook. Her pen danced between notes and highlighted passages. Her focus was absolute. "You don't waste time," he said from the doorway. Emma looked up startled, then smiled. "I figured I should start preparing if I'm really going back to school." "You are." She closed the book slowly. "This still feels like a dream. Like any minute I'll wake up and be back in that little studio apartment working doubles just to make rent." "You're not," Jordan said. "Not anymore." She nodded. "I don't know how to thank you." He stepped into the room, looking at her with quiet seriousness. "Just keep doing what you've been doing. That's all the thanks I need." Emma stood brushing her fingers across the pages. "Zion means a lot to you. He's all I have left of her." "I know." And somehow that simple reply, steady and sure, struck Jordan more deeply than anything else had in a long time. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It was understanding. A connection not born of words, but of shared responsibility and slowly growing trust. In the days that followed, it only deepened. But neither of them knew then just how much more they would come to mean to each other. Emma adjusted quietly to the new rhythm of the house. With Marcia's guidance, she transitioned into her new role seamlessly, not just as Zion's caregiver, but as a core part of his daily world. The nursery became her sanctuary, a place of soft blankets, gentle lighting, and late-night hums that steadied both her and the child she now cared for. Like her own, Marcia had taken to Emma quickly. She showed her everything she'd learned over the years, Zion's sleep patterns, feeding preferences, even the lullabies that calmed him fastest. There was no jealousy in her transition, only warmth and a quiet pride as she watched Emma step into a role she clearly belonged in. "You've got the hands for it," Marcia said one afternoon, pouring tea in the kitchen. "Not everyone does." Emma smiled. "I wasn't sure at first, but it feels natural." Marcia nodded. "Because it is." Upstairs, Jordan noticed the subtle changes as well. The quiet harmony Emma brought, the steadiness she maintained even during Zion's fussiest days. It allowed him to breathe differently to work, without the knot of worry always coiled in his gut. He started coming home earlier. Sometimes he paused in the hallway just to listen, Emma's voice singing softly, Zion's giggles answering. It felt like healing he hadn't asked for, but was grateful to receive. One night, well after the sun had set, Jordan found Emma asleep in the armchair beside Zion's crib. She'd meant to stay just long enough to monitor his breathing after a stubborn cough earlier in the day. Her hand rested on the crib rail head, tilted back, the flicker of a nightlight casting shadows across her face. He didn't wake her. He just stood there, silent, something tightening in his chest that he couldn't name. It wasn't just admiration. It wasn't even gratitude. It was something far more dangerous. He left before the feeling could settle in. The next morning, Emma woke early and found an envelope waiting outside her door. Inside was her first tuition payment receipt and a handwritten note from Jordan. Enrollment confirmed. Your schedule starts next Monday. Marcia will help adjust your hours as needed. Thank you for everything. She read it twice, her heart full in a way she hadn't felt in years. This was more than a job. It was a second chance, and she wasn't going to waste it. Classes began, and Emma split her time with precision. She studied at night after Zion was asleep, took virtual lectures in the late mornings while Marcia filled in and did her clinical readings during nap times. Jordan had given her access to everything she needed: books, equipment, even a laptop upgraded for her coursework. One evening, Jordan came home early again. He found Emma in the living room with Zion nestled in her lap, both of them staring at a picture book she narrated with soft inflection. She looked up and gave him a brief smile. He returned it, walking past, slowly lingering longer than necessary. He wasn't sure when it had happened, when his admiration turned into interest. But he knew it now. He knew because of the way he noticed her smile in the smallest moments, or how his thoughts drifted to her even when he was in meetings. Still, he said nothing. Emma, for her part, noticed too. The way Jordan lingered, the way his tone had softened, how he looked at her with a kind of quiet searching. But she didn't act on it. Couldn't. Not yet. There was too much at stake. Her education, her future. And most of all, Zion, whose well-being was always her priority. Crossing lines now could unravel everything. So they continued as they were, bound by their care for the same little boy, learning to orbit each other, carefully, silently. Then came the call. Emma was in the kitchen reviewing her pathophysiology notes when her phone rang with a number she hadn't seen in years. She hesitated before answering. Emma Brooks. Yes. This is Brianna Hayes, from Riverside Medical. Emma's throat tightened. Yes, I remember you. I'm sorry to reach out like this, but I just saw your name on a nursing return list. I was your clinical mentor before you left. Emma sat down slowly. It's been a while. I know, and I'm reaching out because I'm impressed. Your transcript still stands, and your application was fast-tracked. But I also wanted to ask, what made you come back now? Emma glanced down the hall toward the nursery. Because I finally have something to fight for again, she said quietly. There was a pause. I think that's all the reason anyone ever needs. They exchanged details, and Emma hung up with her heart pounding. She'd wanted this for years. And now the door was opening again. That night, she found Jordan in the study. Can I talk to you? He looked up immediately. Of course. I got a call today from Riverside Medical. My return to clinical rotation starts next month. It's part of the accelerated program. It'll be a bit more demanding. Jordan set his pen down. You think you can handle it? Emma met his eyes. Yes, I want to. I just wanted you to know. It'll mean longer nights, some days away. But I'll make sure Zion is never left without care. Jordan nodded, slow and thoughtful. I trust you. We'll make it work. Her breath hitched a little at the "we." Thank you, she said. He smiled. You're welcome. She turned to leave, but paused. Jordan. He looked up again. I don't take any of this for granted, not the trust, not the second chance. I just wanted you to know that. He held her gaze. Neither do I. And as she walked away, Jordan realized something. The house no longer felt too big. Because somehow, without planning it, they were filling it together. The early days of Emma's return to clinical rotations were marked by constant movement morning feeds, lectures over earbuds, quick check-ins with Marcia, and hours of study once Zion was asleep. Every minute mattered. But somehow it worked. She would slip into scrubs before sunrise and return after dark tired, but always stopping to kiss Zion goodnight. Her dedication became a rhythm that the house adapted to. Marcia, nearing her retirement, offered quiet support, and Jordan rearranged his own schedule without ever saying it aloud. He simply made sure someone Emma trusted was always nearby. They didn't talk about it. They just made it work. One evening, Emma arrived home to find Jordan asleep in the nursery armchair. Zion nestled on his chest, both of them breathing in, soft tandem. She paused in the doorway, her bag still slung over her shoulder. The sight hit her harder than she expected. Jordan stirred at the sound of her keys. "I didn't mean to fall asleep," he said, blinking. Emma smiled gently. "It's okay. You look like you needed it." He shifted slowly, careful not to wake Zion. He was fussing. Wouldn't settle unless I picked him up. "I remembered what you did the other night. Worked like magic." Emma stepped closer. "You're getting the hang of it. I've had a good teacher." There was warmth in his tone, quiet and genuine. Emma took Zion from his arms and tucked him gently into the crib. "You're doing better than you think," she said without turning. Jordan watched her a moment longer before standing. "You hungry?" She looked surprised. "Actually, yeah. I didn't get a chance to eat before I left the hospital. Come on, I'll make something." In the kitchen, he pulled out ingredients while she sat at the counter leaning on one elbow. Watching him chop vegetables with methodical care made her smile. "You cook?" she asked. "Enough to get by," he replied. "Taught myself after college. I hated eating out every day. Got boring." "You surprise me sometimes." Jordan glanced at her, a playful edge to his voice. "That a good thing?" "I think so." They ate together at the small breakfast table. Not the formal dining room, not a catered meal, just two people sharing space and warmth and silence. That didn't feel awkward. She told him about her clinicals, about the kids she was working with, the cases that stuck with her. He listened not with the distracted patience of someone being polite, but with real focus. "I didn't know you liked pediatrics so much," he said. "It started with my brother. But now, I think I'm drawn to kids because they're honest. They show you exactly how they feel. There's no pretending." Jordan nodded. "Zion's taught me that too. He doesn't care how much money I make or where I've been. He just wants love presents." Emma met his eyes. And he has that. For a beat, neither of them looked away. But the moment passed, and Emma stood rinsing her plate. "Thank you. For dinner." "Anytime." Weeks passed. Zion continued to grow stronger, babbling and crawling more each day. Emma's coursework intensified, but she remained steady. Jordan found himself quietly adjusting his own days around hers. Dropping Zion at playgroup if Emma was at the clinic, sitting in during pediatric webinars when she was running late, even learning to prep bottles without help. One afternoon, as Emma returned home, she found Zion sitting in his high chair with Jordan crouched in front of him, a spoon in one hand and a splatter of carrot puree on his shirt. "I'm not saying I failed," Jordan said as she walked in, "but I definitely underestimated his left hook." Emma laughed. "He gets that from his mother." Jordan smiled. "You talk about her often?" She paused. "No. I figured you might not want to." "I do, eventually." but not because I feel obligated, only when it feels right. Emma nodded, setting her bag down. She must have been amazing. She was, Jordan said. Different from you in almost every way, but strong, quietly brave. You remind me of her sometimes. Emma looked away, touched but unsure how to respond. As summer settled over the city, the house came alive in new ways. There were moments of lightness, a picnic in the backyard with a plastic blanket, and Zion's favorite rattle-spontaneous dance sessions in the living room, Emma's laughter echoing down the hall. But with those moments came tension too. Neither of them talked about what was slowly building between them. The quiet glances, the way they lingered in conversation, how Jordan's hand sometimes brushed hers and neither pulled away fast enough. One night after a particularly long shift, Emma came home to find a single note left for her in the foyer. Zion's down early. Backyard if you need quiet. She followed the note to find Jordan on the patio, sleeves rolled up, sitting with a glass of wine and 2 lit candles flickering gently on the table. He looked up. Didn't know if you'd want company? She stepped closer. I do. They sat under the stars, the city a soft hum in the distance. Ever think about what's next? Jordan asked after a while. Emma turned to him. All the time. But it's blurry. I've been surviving for so long, I forgot what planning felt like. He nodded. Same. There was a pause, heavy and full. I don't want to make things complicated, he said. Especially not when you're doing something so important. Emma looked down. I know. But I also don't want to pretend like I don't see what's happening here. She exhaled slowly. Neither do I. They didn't move closer, didn't say the words, but something settled between them that night. A quiet agreement that whatever this was, it was real. And when the time was right, they would figure it out. For now, they had a child to raise, dreams to build, and a home that slowly and unexpectedly was becoming something more than any of them had imagined. Jordan couldn't sleep. Not fully. Not since that night on the patio. Emma's presence lingered in his thoughts like a melody he couldn't silence. It wasn't just attraction. It was something deeper. The way she listened when he spoke. The gentleness with which she touched Zion's curls. The fire in her eyes when she talked about her studies. Every part of her told him she was more than what she allowed herself to believe. But he kept his distance, because rushing this, whatever this was, could risk everything. In the weeks that followed, the house became a living pulse of movement and quiet care. Emma's schoolwork intensified as she began her in-hospital rotations. Jordan stepped in wherever he could, often surprising himself with how naturally it came. He wasn't just managing the household. He was showing up, changing diapers, packing bottles, reading bedtime stories, even when Emma wasn't around to see it. He wanted her to succeed. And more than that, he wanted her to know he supported her without needing praise. One late afternoon, Emma came home with her shoulders slumped and eyes dull with exhaustion. She didn't even take off her shoes. She collapsed onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. Jordan sat beside her after a moment. Rough shift. She nodded into her palms. Lost a baby today. The words weren't dramatic. They were heavy, real. He didn't ask questions. He didn't pry. He simply placed a hand on her back and let the silence do the work. After a while, she spoke again. We did everything, the whole team. He was just 3 months old. His mom was still in her hospital gown when they wheeled him away. Jordan's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Emma wiped her eyes. It just hit me harder than I expected. I thought I was ready. But all I could think about was Zion, how fast things can change. Jordan turned toward her. That's why what you do matters so much. She nodded, still distant. I know. It's just, it stays with you. You don't have to carry it alone, he said softly. Her eyes flicked to his, and for the first time in a while, she didn't look away. I don't think I've ever had someone say that to me before, she whispered. Well, now you do. Later that night, Emma stood over Zion's crib, watching his chest rise and fall. She reached down, gently brushed his cheek with the back of her finger, then leaned against the wall and let herself cry. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a release. A necessary one. And she didn't notice Jordan quietly placing a folded blanket around her shoulders before slipping away again. The seasons shifted. Emma finished her rotations and was now 1 semester away from completing her degree. She moved more confidently, spoke with more assurance, and smiled more often. Zion was now walking in chaotic bursts, exploring every room like it was brand new, his laughter echoing off the walls. Jordan cherished every second. One morning, Zion toddled into the kitchen wearing one of Jordan's neckties, like a cape dragging a stuffed giraffe. Emma laughed so hard she nearly dropped her coffee. Jordan just stared for a moment, letting the scene settle deep into memory. Remind me to save that tie, he said. I'm never wearing it again. They were a family, in every way that mattered. But the space between Emma and Jordan remained undefined, humming with unspoken words and half-finished glances. That changed the day Emma received her final letter from the nursing board. She came into the study, envelope in hand, eyes wide with disbelief. I passed, she said, almost as if she needed to hear it out loud to believe it. Jordan rose from his desk. Of course you did. She handed him the paper, her hands shaking. It's real. I'm officially licensed. I can work in a hospital, full-time, anywhere. He read it over and looked back at her. Anywhere, Emma's breath caught. I mean, I haven't applied anywhere yet. I haven't even thought that far ahead. But you could, if you wanted to. She hesitated. Yes. The air shifted. Jordan folded the letter carefully and handed it back. That's amazing. You've earned it. Thank you. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. So what's next? Emma sat on the edge of the leather armchair. I don't know. There's a hospital in Pasadena that's hiring. A friend from my cohort mentioned it. He nodded slowly. That's an hour away. More in traffic. Neither said what they were thinking. Emma looked down. I don't want to leave Zion. You wouldn't, not really. He'll always know who you are. That's not what I meant. Jordan looked up. Then say it. She took a breath. This isn't just a job to me, and you're not just someone I work for. But I don't want to assume anything either. He moved closer. You're not assuming. You're just saying what I haven't had the guts to say out loud. They stood there, the silence loaded with every moment they'd shared, every secret glance, every long night spent beside a crib or a kitchen counter. Finally, Jordan spoke. I want you to stay, Emma. Not just for Zion, for me. She exhaled, her voice unsteady. Then tell me what that looks like. I don't know yet. But I know it's not just professional anymore. I know I look for you even when I don't need anything. I know Zion lights up when you walk in the room. And I know I trust you with both of our hearts. Emma's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She nodded. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. Jordan stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, gentle but firm. For the first time, they let the weight of everything fall away. The past, the rules, the fear. They stood in the quiet certainty of something new. Outside, Zion pressed his face to the glass patio door, squealing and slapping his tiny palms against the window, entirely unaware that the world he loved was coming together behind him, piece by piece. The next morning brought an unfamiliar ease to the house. The air felt lighter, the silences more comforting than awkward. Jordan brewed coffee in the kitchen, while Emma played peekaboo with Zion on the floor, their laughter blending with the soft clinks of ceramic mugs and running water. For the first time, their lives moved in sync without hesitation. Emma had stayed. The declaration wasn't just emotional, it was practical too. She declined the Pasadena job offer without regret, instead beginning the application process for a pediatric role at a local clinic nearby. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful, close to home, and flexible enough for her to continue helping with Zion. She and Jordan didn't define their relationship with labels. Not yet. There was still too much to process. But they shared space now, meals, chores, moments, and they no longer moved around each other with caution. Their routines intertwined naturally, like they had always been meant to. One evening, Jordan found Emma outside, watering the potted herbs she had planted weeks ago when stress pushed her to do something with her hands. He walked over with 2 glasses of iced tea, setting one down beside her. "You turned this place into a home," he said. Emma smiled, brushing hair from her face. "It was always a home. You just weren't ready to live in it." He sat beside her. "You're right." She looked over at him. "Do you ever think about what comes next? Not just with work or Zion. With us?" Jordan nodded slowly. "All the time." She waited. "I think about waking up and knowing you'll be there. About Zion growing up knowing what love looks like in every room. I think about family, not just the kind you're born with, but the kind you choose." Emma's voice was quiet. "That's what I want too." They didn't need more words than that. Emma's first day at the clinic was a whirlwind of nerves and purpose. She wore her new badge with pride and kept a tiny photo of Zion in her pocket. The cases were hard kids with chronic illness, parents on edge, a pace that never slowed, but she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. When she came home that night, Jordan had dinner waiting. Zion sat in his high chair, his tray covered in mashed sweet potatoes and soft bits of chicken. Emma kissed them both and joined in her body, tired, but her spirit lifted. "You okay?" Jordan asked as they cleaned up. She nodded. "I am. It's a lot. But I can do it." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You always could." The day settled into a rhythm again. The house was no longer a mansion, echoing with wealth and loneliness. It was warm, lived in, full of energy and comfort. Weekends turned into small adventures, trips to the farmer's market, early morning walks in the park, with Zion riding Jordan's shoulders, late-night movies watched in shared silence once Zion was asleep. They never talked about the exact moment their lives merged. It didn't need defining. It was in the way Jordan rested his hand on Emma's back as they walked, the way Emma would find his socks mixed in with her laundry, the way Zion reached for them both without distinction. They were a unit. Then one afternoon, as Emma came home from the clinic, she found her old suitcase by the hallway closet. She hadn't noticed it in months. She opened it, fingers brushing the worn fabric. Tucked inside was the photo of her brother Elijah, still where she'd left it. She sat down, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. Jordan appeared behind her quietly. "I didn't move it, I was thinking you might want to go through it again." Emma turned. "Thank you." He sat beside her. "Do you think he'd be proud?" Her voice cracked. "I hope so. I think about him every time I walk into the clinic, every time I hold a child's hand. He's the reason I started this. And somehow losing him led me here." Jordan placed his hand over hers. "I never knew loss could lead to something beautiful. Until now." They sat in silence, surrounded by memory, but held by the present. Weeks passed, and Zion celebrated his first birthday in the backyard, surrounded by balloons, finger food, and a small circle of people who mattered. Marcia came glowing with retirement joy. Mr. Henry delivered a heartfelt toast. Emma baked the cake herself, banana and oat soft enough for Zion to devour with his bare hands. Jordan stood beside Emma as they watched Zion smear frosting across his cheeks and shriek with joy. "You think he'll remember this?" Emma asked. "No," Jordan said. "But we will." That night, after the guests had gone and Zion was asleep, Emma found Jordan on the balcony looking out at the stars. She joined him, wrapping a blanket around them both. "You ever think we were meant to find each other?" she asked. It started with a cough. Small, dry, barely noticeable. Zion was just over a year old now, walking confidently, babbling in full sentences only he understood, and climbing everything he could. Emma noticed the cough one morning as she was dressing him. She paused, brushing his curls away from his forehead. "You okay, little man?" she whispered. He smiled, eyes bright, and reached for her necklace, but the cough came again. Quick, shallow. She kept watch throughout the day. By evening, the cough deepened, and his energy began to wane. He clung to her more, his steps slower, his smile faint. When Jordan returned from a meeting and saw Emma sitting on the couch with Zion bundled in her arms, his expression changed immediately. "What's wrong?" "I think he's coming down with something," Emma said. "Low fever, and he's been coughing more." Jordan crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt beside them. "Should we take him in?" Emma shook her head. "Not yet. Let's monitor it overnight. I already started him on fluids, and I'm keeping a close eye." Jordan trusted her. He always had. But the helplessness of seeing his son unwell never got easier. They spent the evening together, Emma holding Zion as Jordan prepared warm soup, both of them, moving around each other without instruction. It was a rhythm they'd mastered, unspoken, natural. By midnight, Zion was sleeping restlessly. Emma curled beside his crib on the floor with a blanket, refusing to leave him. "You don't have to do that," Jordan said from the doorway, his voice low. "I want to," she said simply. Jordan pulled in a chair, dragging it close. "Then I'm staying too." They sat there together in silence, watching Zion breathe, each breath steady but thinner than they liked. When morning came, Zion's fever had climbed. They didn't hesitate. Emma packed a bag while Jordan called the pediatrician. Within the hour, they were on their way to the hospital. The ER was a blur of movement and sound. Nurses, clipboards, bright lights. Emma carried Zion as Jordan handled paperwork. When the doctor entered the room, Emma stood instantly, laying out the symptoms with calm precision. Fever peaking at 102. Persistent dry cough, lethargic since early morning. Mild wheezing began an hour ago. The doctor looked at her, impressed. "Are you in healthcare?" "Pediatric nurse." The doctor nodded and began the exam. After several tests and observation, they were told it was likely RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, common but dangerous in young children. Zion would need to stay overnight for monitoring. Jordan sat on the edge of the hospital bed, cradling his son while Emma arranged the IV and adjusted the pulse oximeter. She moved like staff, efficient, compassionate. But her hands shook when no one was watching. Later, after Zion was stable and asleep, Jordan found her in the hallway, leaning against the wall, her face pale. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, but tears filled her eyes. "It's different when it's him. I've seen hundreds of cases, handled them all. But this is Zion." Jordan reached for her hand. "I know, but he's in the best hands. Yours." She closed her eyes. "I just hate feeling powerless." "You're not. You're the reason we caught it early." They stood there for a long time, side by side, fingers entwined, drawing strength from each other. Zion was discharged 2 days later, still weak, but improving. The house returned to its soft pace, careful and slow as Zion recovered. Emma took a short leave from the clinic. Jordan canceled meetings. They both stayed home trading shifts, so one of them was always with him. During one of those quiet afternoons, Emma sat with Zion asleep on her chest, while Jordan worked nearby on the couch. She looked over at him, and for the first time in days, smiled. "You're good at this," she said. "At what? This? Being a dad. Being steady." Jordan looked up. "I'm learning from the best." There was a pause. "Have you thought about the future?" she asked. He set his laptop down. "All the time. I mean, really thought about it. Where we're going." Jordan nodded slowly. "I think about a life where we don't live in the gray, where this us isn't temporary or undefined." Emma's eyes softened. "Me too." He stood and crossed the room, sitting beside her, one arm wrapping around both her and Zion. "I want to build something with you," he said. "Not just for Zion, for us." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then let's build it." The road ahead wasn't promised, but what they had loved, partnership, shared purpose, it was strong. And for the first time in a long time, the future felt like something they would walk into together, not out of necessity, but by choice. The following weeks became a gentle return to normal. Zion regained his energy, filling the house with laughter and mischief again. Emma returned to the clinic with a renewed sense of gratitude, and Jordan eased back into work more grounded than he'd ever been. Their relationship, once undefined, had quietly become something unshakable. There were no labels still, but the way they moved, the way they looked at each other, it was clear. They were building a life, not just coexisting within one. One evening, after putting Zion to bed, Emma came downstairs to find Jordan sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by photo albums. He was flipping through pages, slowly tracing the edges of photographs. She sat beside him. "What are these?" "My parents' old photo books. I found them boxed up in storage." Emma leaned in, smiling as she looked at a black and white image of a young couple dancing in front of a record player. "Is that them?" Jordan nodded. "They were complicated people. My dad worked himself to the bone, trying to prove he could give us a better life. My mom, she stayed strong for all of us, held everything together." Emma turned another page. "They look happy." They were, sometimes, and sometimes they weren't. But they never stopped trying. He paused, then looked at her. "I think that's what this is about. Choosing to try, over and over." She held his gaze. "Even when it's hard." Especially then. They sat in silence for a while, surrounded by memories that weren't theirs, but still felt like part of their story. The next day, while Emma was at the clinic and Zion was napping, Jordan stood in the middle of the nursery and thought about how much had changed in such a short time. A year ago, he couldn't imagine raising a child alone. Now he couldn't imagine doing it without Emma. He walked into his office, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small velvet box he had bought on impulse weeks ago and then hidden away. He opened it, revealing a simple gold band with a single brilliant diamond. It wasn't about the ring. It was about everything it symbolized: trust, growth, second chances, and a love that had risen from the unlikeliest of places. He closed the box and slipped it into his coat pocket. That night, Emma returned late. She kicked off her shoes and rubbed the tension from her shoulders as she stepped into the kitchen. Jordan was there, leaning against the counter, 2 mugs of tea waiting. He handed her one without a word. She smiled and took it, savoring the warmth. "I was thinking," he said after a moment. "We've been through a lot this past year." Emma raised a brow. "That's one way to put it." He chuckled softly. "And I know we've never put a label on us. Never felt like we had to. But I want to say it. Out loud." She looked at him, her expression open. "I love you, Emma." She inhaled, slowly, eyes shining. "I love you too." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't embellished. It was quiet and certain, like the rest of their story. Jordan stepped forward, took her hand, and pulled the velvet box from his pocket. "I've been carrying this around for a while," he said, "waiting for the right moment. But I realized the right moment is whenever we choose it." Emma's breath caught as he opened the box. "I don't need a ceremony or an audience. I just need you. Will you marry me?" She didn't speak at first. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and she nodded, laughing through her tears. "Yes. Of course, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and they stood there, holding each other, their hearts finally fully aligned with the life they had already started living. The following weekend, they told Zion. Well, they tried. He mostly chewed on the ring box and clapped when Emma twirled him around the living room, shouting, "We're getting married." Later, as they sat on the floor with Zion crawling between them, Jordan looked at Emma and whispered, "This is everything I didn't know I needed." She smiled, brushing her fingers over his cheek. "It's everything I thought I lost. Until you." And in that quiet golden space between the past and the future, they simply existed. No grand declarations needed. Just a promise sealed by time and trust in the small daily miracles of love. The kind that shows up, stays, and grows. The kind they would carry forward together. Planning the wedding wasn't a whirlwind. There was no rush, no pressure, no magazine spreads or extravagant checklists. It was simple, intentional, and uniquely theirs. They decided on an intimate ceremony at home. Just close friends, a few family members, and of course, Zion. The backyard was transformed with strings of lights, white flowers, and soft jazz playing through the speakers. Emma wore a cream-colored dress that flowed when she walked, her hair curled softly over her shoulders. Jordan wore a navy suit, and no tie sleeves rolled just enough to show he wasn't trying to impress anyone but her. Zion toddled around in suspenders, waving at every guest, clearly under the impression the whole day was for him. And in a way it was. They exchanged vows in the grass beneath the old oak tree, where Emma often sat with Zion during warm afternoons. Their promises weren't scripted. They spoke from the heart, each word echoing years of growth and healing. "I didn't know how to trust anyone after losing her," Jordan said. "But then you showed me what quiet strength looks like. What showing up every day, even when it's hard, really means." Emma's voice wavered as she replied, "I came into this house thinking I was just here to clean. But I found a purpose, a child who needed me, and a man who never asked me to be more than myself, but gave me room to grow into everything I'd forgotten I could be." The guests clapped as they kissed. Zion threw a handful of rose petals into the air, squealing with laughter. That night, after everyone had gone, and the lights were still glowing gently over the lawn, Emma and Jordan sat on the patio with their shoes off and feet propped up. "Married?" Emma said, tasting the word like it was something new. Feels right, Jordan replied. She rested her head on his shoulder. You ever think about what we'd tell our past selves if we could go back? He chuckled. I'd probably just shake myself and say, open your damn eyes. Emma laughed, then grew thoughtful. I think I'd say, hold on. The pain isn't the end. It's just the start of something better. Jordan reached over and took her hand. We made it, Em. We did. Life after the wedding settled into a deeper kind of rhythm. One where chaos still came in toddler tantrums, surprise deadlines, and the occasional midnight fever. But it was balanced by joy that had roots. Emma thrived at the clinic, quickly becoming a favorite among both patients and staff. Her calm presence and gentle precision made her a pillar in the pediatric unit. She came home tired but fulfilled, always greeted by Zion's squeals and Jordan's warm embrace. Jordan, too, had changed. He started letting go of the constant pressure to outperform, choosing instead to be more present, more human. His business meetings were shorter, his evenings were reserved. His priorities had shifted. They spent more time together as a family weekend road trips, story time rituals, baking disasters turned into kitchen laughter. Zion's vocabulary exploded. He called Emma Mama now without hesitation. Jordan had never prompted it. It had just happened. One day he said it, and no one corrected him. Because he was right. Emma was his mother in every way that mattered. One evening after Zion had gone to bed, Emma sat on the couch with Jordan, her legs curled under her. She was flipping through a parenting magazine when she looked up and said, You know what I realized today? Jordan looked over. What? We're happy. Like, genuinely happy. He smiled slowly. Yeah, we are. And it's not the fairy tale kind. It's messy and loud and full of diaper explosions and last-minute dinners. But it's real. He finished. She leaned over and kissed him softly. It's real. Months passed. Zion turned 2. Emma got promoted to assistant head nurse. Jordan started mentoring young entrepreneurs, spending more time speaking in schools and giving back to the community. One afternoon, Emma arrived home to find a crayon drawing taped to the fridge. A shaky figure with 2 tall people and a smaller one in between, all holding hands. Above it, in crooked letters, My Family. She smiled, touched the paper gently, and whispered, Ours. Later that night, she told Jordan. He took her hand and held it over his heart. We built this, he said, and we'll keep building it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't without challenges. But it was theirs earned, nurtured, and deeply, completely loved. And in that home filled with laughter, learning, and a little boy who once cried in a kitchen sink and found a mother in the most unexpected way, their story continued full of quiet strength and everyday miracles. Autumn settled over the city, crisp and golden. Leaves drifted across the stone patio where Zion now played with a toy truck, bundled in a little fleece jacket, cheeks flushed with the cool air. Emma watched from the kitchen window, a smile tugging at her lips as she stirred a pot of soup. Jordan stepped up behind her arms, wrapping gently around her waist. He's growing fast, he murmured. She leaned back into him. Too fast. They stood there for a moment, the silence between them warmed their home, filled with the smell of roasting vegetables and the soft patter of Zion's play. Jordan kissed her temple. Come on, let's go sit with him. They walked outside and joined their son laughing as he proudly showed them how his truck could crash into flower pots. Emma and Jordan sat on the steps watching him, their hands lightly clasped between them. So, Jordan said softly. Have you thought about it? Emma looked at him. About what? Adding to the family. She blinked, surprised, but not startled. The thought had been sitting quietly in the corners of her mind for months. I have, she said slowly. But I didn't want to push anything. Things have just started to feel balanced. Jordan nodded. I get that. But watching you with Zion, I can't help but imagine what it'd be like to hold a baby again. From the beginning. With you. Her eyes softened. I think I'd like that too. He smiled. No pressure, just when the time feels right. Emma squeezed his hand. When it does, we'll know. Over the next few months, life moved as it always had. Steady, beautiful in its ordinary moments. Emma's days at the clinic were full but fulfilling. Jordan launched a foundation supporting single-parent households and education access, something he credited to the transformation he'd experienced through fatherhood. Zion became more curious, more talkative. He asked questions constantly, the kind only a 2-year-old could. Why is the moon round? Do trucks sleep? Can carrots fly? Their home became a place of stories. Storybooks, bedtime tales. Emma's gentle voice reading by the nightlight and Jordan's made-up bedtime adventures that always ended in laughter. And then one morning, the test was positive. Emma sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the little plastic stick, her hand trembling just slightly. Joy mixed with nerves, hope with disbelief. She heard the front door open, Jordan's voice calling gently. In the bathroom? She replied barely above a whisper. He stepped in and saw her, the test still in her hand. He paused. And then slowly, a smile bloomed across his face. Emma stood, eyes misty. We're having a baby. Jordan crossed the room in 2 strides and wrapped her in his arms, holding her tightly. A new chapter had begun. 9 months later, on a rainy spring morning, their daughter arrived, tiny, fierce, and full of life. Zion stood beside the hospital bed, eyes wide as he looked at his new baby sister. She's small, he whispered. She'll grow, Emma said, smiling through tears. Jordan lifted him so he could see her better. Her name is Elise. Zion looked at her, then at his parents, and nodded solemnly. She can play trucks when she's bigger. The room filled with quiet laughter. Back home, the family settled into a new rhythm. Sleepless nights, newborn cries, and the tender chaos of a house growing fuller with love. Elise brought with her a softness, a renewal. She had Emma's eyes, Jordan's quiet stare, and a grip like she never planned to let go. And through it all, Emma and Jordan held onto each other. There were hard days, tired mornings, moments of doubt, but they were no longer navigating life alone. One evening, after both children had fallen asleep, Emma and Jordan sat on the living room floor, the only light coming from the fireplace. I used to be afraid of quiet, Jordan said. It felt like something was missing. Emma looked over at him. And now it feels like peace. She nodded. That's because we filled the silence with love, with family. He reached over, brushed his fingers across her cheek. You filled it. She took his hand. We did. Together. Outside, the rain tapped gently on the windows, and inside the home they had built, born of loss, built on trust, and sustained by love, stood strong. It was not a story of perfection. It was a story of presence. And it would go on one day at a time, with laughter in the kitchen, toys scattered on the floor, and 2 hearts that chose each other again and again, always.